Good morning, Psych students. Here today to talk to you about prejudice and discrimination. So, hopefully, you had a chance to watch the documentary on YouTube, A Class Divided, kind of a legendary social psych experiment. You didn't have to watch the entire hour, but I wanted you to get through the classroom experience in the hopes that makes you think about where prejudice comes from, because that's really what social psychologists are interested in. We behave in a poor way towards groups that aren't like us traditionally. This is true all around the world, and social psychologists want to know why. Well, what are the origins of these sorts of things? So, and really quick, let's process the experiment from yesterday. You had her classroom, third grade classroom in Riceville, Iowa, where the teacher said, okay, today the blue-eyed children are better than the brown-eyed children. The blue-eyed children get all the privileges, and the brown-eyed children get yelled at. And and by the after lunch period, you have that famous moment where the little kid gets in a fight on the playground because people were calling him brown eyes. It was basically a racial slur for 1970s Iowa kids. One kid was not shy about shouting the N-word, unfortunately, during that portion of the experiment as well. And the next day, the brown-eyed kids are on top and the blue-eyed kids are on the bottom, and the brown-eyed kids get treated better and the blue-eyed kids get depressed and sad, and everybody's angry and they hate each other. And true story, my fifth grade teacher did this with us, and to try to show us what prejudice would feel like, or what it would feel like to be mistreated just for something you couldn't control. And all right, color. The sad thing for me, at least, was I have green eyes. And now I always get people even probably staring at the screen. Wait, does he really have green eyes? So the blue-eyed kids were on the top, the brown-eyed kids were on the bottom, and then there was me with the green eyes. Well, I got picked on by the kids with brown eyes because they needed someone to pick on, and I was the only kid in the class with green eyes. Terrible stuff. So social psychologists want to know, what are the origins of this, the way we mistreat each other based on whether it's racial differences, ethnic differences, eye color differences, things like that. So we're looking at this page here, Prejudice and Discrimination, the second to last page of notes that you have as we slowly work our way through the social psych practice. We'll probably, basically all leading to a unit test that we'll have sometime next week before the end of the school year. So, prejudice and discrimination, where does it come from? What are some of the origins of it? Well, number one on here, social learning theory. Okay, saying, hopefully you remember, if you took Psych in the Mind last semester, social learning theory has to do with learning from observing others. Okay, you learn to imitate. Other people model this behavior for you. So you learn by watching others. And, we can't really have a discussion, which is unfortunate. It's always good to talk about this in class, but think about family members that you've grown up with. Do you have any family members who exhibit prejudice? Do you have any family members who are racist? And if you grew up around them, that might rub off on you a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't, but I often ask kids when I teach this, how many of you have heard one of your parents use a racial slur? And typically 2/3 of the class raise their hands. And, not judging your parents, but we pass that down from generation to generation. I'll never forget my grandfather, who lived in born in England, moved to Detroit, lived in Detroit his whole life. But he had certain prejudices. And I remember in 2001, at this point my grandfather's 98 years old. Okay, so he's kind of old school in that sense. And I was working at Rich East at the time, my first teaching job. Rich East is a very diverse place culturally and ethnically. And he asked me, so Matt, you have your first teaching job. Is it at a colored school? And they're like, wow, it's Rich East is a good school, and it has lots of different types of people at it. Okay, trying to brush that off, but it passes that down. That sort of thing you learn by watching. And media could play a role as well. Perhaps, this is one of the concerns they have with the way media represents different ethnic and racial groups, is that if you don't have any contact, let's say you don't know any, Irish people, and all you see on the media is Irish people misbehaving and getting in fights at soccer games. You might think to yourself, well, that's just what Irish people are like, and clearly it's not the case. Ireland, country with millions of people Irish descent here in the United States. But again, you learn from watching others. Social identity theory. Okay, so we're on to number 2. Social identity theory has to do with us versus them, basically. A tendency to favor your own group above others. A tendency to favor your own group above others. And so you have the 2 points down there, in-group and out-group. In-group is us, out-group is them. Okay? And we tend to exhibit what psychologists call in-group bias, meaning, when we talk about, I'm sure not all of you love everybody in Lincoln Way West, but, think about it this way, then us versus them. West people, we're good, decent human beings, we're friendly, and we have lots of school spirit, and yay, us. Okay, and then you've got East. Kids in the past told me East kids are rich and stuck up, and all kinds of, and Central kids are mean. And you have the in-group bias. Okay, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. That sort of identity that we kind of latch onto. I mean, using silliness as school rivalries because we know there are people in Frankfurt who aren't really rich, and we know there are people at West who aren't the nicest people in the world. And with social identity theory, you tend to ignore those others. You tend to see the other, them, as kind of a homogenous block. Okay, all of them are like this. Okay, whereas we have lots of differences. It's called outgroup homogeneity. We tend to see everybody in the outgroup as the same. Even though we know, that was true when I was in high school. I was at the most racially and ethnically diverse school in Rockford, Illinois, Rockford, Auburn, and home of Toronto Raptors star Fred VanVleet. And, we looked at the other schools in the area, Rockford, Guilford. And I was like, oh, those Rockford, Guilford kids, they're all snobby, rich white kids. And then I'd meet a black kid from Rockford, Guilford. Well, you're still a snobby, white, rich kid. Yeah, that's not the case at all. But we tend, this is us, that's them, and you build on that, and that becomes social identity theory. And you saw that a little bit in the video yesterday. And this is what the brown-eyed kids are like, and the brown-eyed kids are lazy, and the brown-eyed kids waste water, and all kinds of things like that. That's social identity theory. Social justification theory is it's pretty pernicious and sometimes pervasive in our society. The social justification theory idea is that we use race to justify things like social status, okay, or ethnicity to justify why things are the way they are in society. So if, let's say, I'm of English and Polish descent, okay, dad's side's English, mom's side's Polish, and if I were to say, well, look how successful I am and wealthy that I am, and it's because of my genes, it's because of my good hardworking roots in the English and Polish tradition, and that would be, I'm on top because of that. Somebody else, let's pick a random ethnicity. We'll say the Swiss, okay? And you see somebody from Switzerland, and they're not doing as well financially, and they're not doing as well academically, and you say, well, part of it is because your Swiss background, and Swiss just aren't as good as the rest of us. Okay, that would be an example of social justification theory. So I'm on top because my ethnic group is better than yours. You're on the bottom because your ethnic group is a bunch of failures. That would be social justification theory. So if you've ever heard anybody making this kind of argument, okay, it's a way of justifying their place in society. It's a way of justifying their prejudice. Okay, the reason that I am successful is because of my ethnic group, and my ethnic group works hard and claws for every inch, and the other ethnic groups just don't have it like me because they're lazy. I'm on top because we're the best. They're on the bottom because they're the worst. And then finally, number 4 is scapegoat theory. If I was with you guys right now in class, I would show you the famous clip from South Park about 15 years ago. They had an episode where aliens from the future came and started working at all the jobs that the people in South Park, Colorado didn't want, which led to this long running joke that continues to this day of people shouting, "They took our jobs!" Okay, and then somebody says, "They took our jobs!" And everybody shouting, "They took our jobs." Scapegoat theory is blaming an ethnic group, okay, for society's problems. Okay, so everything wrong in society is the fault of this ethnic group. And that would be, so you're blaming, you're taking blame, and you know, we do this. Okay, if you look at American history, typically we have always blamed immigrants. Okay, and this is true of any immigrant group. Okay, and we weren't big fans of the Irish coming over in the 1840s and the 1850s. We actually invented, those of you in U.S. history, an entire political party called the Know Nothings, whose basic policy was the Irish are ruining America. We need to get rid of them. You know, they call themselves Know Nothings American, the American Party. Eastern European immigrants like my great grandfather Jablonski coming over in the late 1800s, early 1900s. You know, they were thought to be the problem with America, bringing all their Eastern European problems and Bolshevism and things like that. So, you know, we wanted to keep them out, and you know, it continues to this day with not wanting different ethnic groups and immigrant groups in our country because they would somehow ruin our country. And that's scapegoat theory, you know, and it's a very powerful, very appealing theory, and it's something to think about, because I think if you look at the history of America, we've often done this to minorities, we've often done this to different ethnic groups, and you know, the hope that understanding it and kind of seeing where prejudice and discrimination and things like this come from, hopefully we can avoid it in the future. Okay, because it's really, you know, up to us moving forward to make a more welcoming society where we're judging people, as Dr. King said, by the content of their character, not by the color of their eyes, not by the color of their skin, not by, you know, any sort of minor difference between us. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Tomorrow we'll talk about the last dark lesson. We'll talk about ways that we influence each other for the worse, negative social influence. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. Shoot me an email. See you tomorrow morning.